This is my home. Edmund indicated that this is where I come from. My grandparents lived on Armstrong Road on my mum's side. My mum was there as a single woman and married my father and moved to Mount Pleasant in what was in a brand new suburb in 1958. And I spent my formative decades here, starting at Applecross Kindergarten with Mrs. Pincus, and then to Mount Pleasant Primary School, Applecross High School, and Murdoch University. So if you think about Tangney as an electorate, it starts here in Applecross and goes as far south as Murdoch. So my journey really in my life was sort of starting at one end of the electorate and I just worked my way down to the other end. But this place is in my bones. It's defining who I am, and I think I'm one of the luckiest people going to have grown up here. This river system, this beautiful river system that borders both the Swan and Canning. I learned to swim there, I went sailing there, fishing, prawning, very, very special part of Perth and a great part of south of the river as well too. What I'd like to do tonight is just to tell you a little bit about who I am and some of the values that I hold dear and why they're propelling me to run for federal parliament. The first thing to say, and I have it here, and you are the first people to see this. This is the How to Vote card, just printed today. We had the ballot draw on Friday, and my name is number 2. When we had the draw, one of the journalists who was there, he said, "Well, what do you think about that position?" And I said, "I'm just really glad that they spelt my name right, because most of the time in my life they've not spelt my name correctly and all sorts of things, so it was good that at least that far is correct." But what I notice about it is that while at the federal level and in the media and the news commentary and all the rest of it, the conversation is about a choice between Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott, what I notice about the ballot form here in Tangney, neither of their names are on it. So while most people in the end make a decision about who they want to lead the country, in our parliamentary democracy, who you vote for in your local electorate are your local representatives. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to find out a bit about myself as one of your choices at the local electorate, because it'll be my name along with the others that if you live in this electorate you will see on that ballot paper. So as I said, I grew up here. One of the other very important things about my defining years actually starts with my mum, and I was talking to her earlier today. In 1952 she played the organ at the first service at what was the Methodist Church here in Applecross, later the Uniting Church. She is still playing the organ now up at Mount Pleasant Uniting Church. That's almost 60 years. And that faith community that I grew up in the Uniting Church was a very important part of my formative years and helped define who I am. And my home that I come from, that's where the moral compass was that was very much set to true north, and those values carry me forward to this day. And out of that home, which I consider the wealthiest home in Perth, when you measure it by true wealth in terms of joy of life, service for others, insatiable curiosity about knowledge, celebration of family, that wealthy home that I grew up on has given me very much a desire to serve. And I think for each of us, in our own way, that is part of what our life is about, a life of service, a life of wanting to make a difference. And each of us, in our own way, in our careers or in our avocations or through our extended family and friends, we're all trying to do that, to make the world a little bit better place. For me, I'm choosing a political path at this juncture in my life as one of the ways that I would like to make a difference. So some of those differences, and I just quickly talk about 3 of them, and then I'd like to open it up for questions and comments if I could. And I know we're all standing, so I won't talk for too long. I want to make a difference, and I also think that I am a different choice from the Liberal candidate who is the current sitting member here in the seat of Tangney. I want to talk about something that I think is globally significant, something that's nationally significant, and something that is locally significant. And in each of those there is a clear distinction between myself and the main choice that you'll all have in the forthcoming election on August 21st. So at a global level, I can tell you that I'm absolutely, emphatically, 110% convinced that climate change is real, that the science is unequivocal, and that we are the reason for the change, and we need to act. And the timetable for that and the mechanism for that is what should be being discussed, not whether it is or it isn't. NOAA just came out in the United States the other day with really significant data drawn from all over the world in different measures and in different ways, clearly articulating that in the last 5 decades there are significant changes in our global climate. Not in our weather changes every day, but in the climate. That's a real point of difference between myself and the sitting member. At a national level, we have another very big difference. On a day in February in 2008, I was living in the United States at the time as the Trade Commissioner for Western Australia. A very significant event happened here. The Prime Minister said, sorry, it's an amazing day. I got almost more email about that event than anything else that I had in my time in the United States. The only one that bested it was when Steve Irwin was killed. For some reason everyone thought I knew him personally, and I got a deluge of emails and condolences. But that aside, I had people calling me and say, hey, I just heard this on the news, that takes some courage. And I was incredibly proud of that, and I feel that that was a step towards what we hope in our country will be a real reconciliation and also a closing of the gap. The person I'm standing against in the seat of Tangney boycotted that day. Right? At a local level, we both agree on one thing. The internet service is terrible. Doesn't matter who I talk to in this or anywhere. If you're lucky, you've got an ADSL2 hookup. If you don't, you might have cable or satellite or whatever. But pretty much universally, our internet service here is very ordinary. And over the last 7 or 8 years, we've eroded in terms of our international standing about that kind of delivery. That's very much a local issue because we live in the most isolated capital city in the world. And if you think about infrastructure and what you need to be a modern economy and how we are going to thrive and project ourselves globally, having the bandwidth and the speed is vitally important. At the founding of Australia, 1901, in terms of our modern Australian democracy, the deal that got Western Australia over the line to become part of the Federation, and I don't know if you know your history at all, but in fact there was at one point it was more likely that New Zealand was going to be part of Australia than Western Australia was. But the deal that got us over the line here was a railway link between here and the eastern states. And that infrastructure build and that commitment to connect us to the rest of the country said, okay, we're in. And I think we're at that point again now where we need to say yes to that, and it's a massive infrastructure spend, billions and billions of dollars, but ones that are worth it. And that is also a point of difference because while myself and my opponent both say that we're agreed that it needs to be different, their policies are we're going to scrap the NBN. I think it's full steam ahead on that as well. I'll just finish with another little piece of history from Western Australia. You can't quite see it from here, but almost. Maybe if Edmund had another story on top, you'd be able to look over towards Kings Park. That beautiful urban park that we have here. That was established in 1831. Gazetted right at the beginning of the colony. If you know about the Swan River Colony, that was founded in 1829. So within 2 years of the start of the colony, the early settlers here, and Septimus Roe was one of the people that did it, set aside an area of land and said this will be a park for everybody. What I think was so visionary about that is that at that time the whole place was a park. Right? It was bush for as far as the eye could see, but they had an imagination where they could look forward and say, you know, there'll be a time when there'll be a city here and then this will be a metropolis, so let's set something aside right now. And that kind of vision for the future, of making decisions not for now, but for our children and our children's children, that legacy I think is so vital and so important, and that propels me forward in my decision making. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected for the seat of Tangney, those are the kinds of stories and and inspirations that I want to take forward to be able to make a difference. Thank you very much.